Okay, so welcome to the first workshop, and today we're going to go over SOLIDWORKS. So to do that, what we will do to start out with is just click on your SOLIDWORKS file if you don't already have it in your start pinned there or on your desktop. It'll show up, just double click, and it'll take a second to open up. We'll just do that so that it's ready. But what I want to start out by saying is we, as the Engineering Design Club, what we're focusing on is design. So this is something I found from one of the universities, and it's basically a template for how to design, which is really convenient, and it's numbered 1 through 10, but it's not actually linear. I do want to stress that. We'll talk more about this, but you can get a feel for what the design process is just by reading this guy. But in the future, I will be holding a dedicated workshop that explains this, and we'll actually apply some of it. We'll apply it several times. So anyway, that's, if you're interested in finding that, that is found under the club. It's like the first post in the channel under the hyperbolic time chamber. But if you just scroll all the way up, it's this guy right here. So with that said, today's workshop will be covering designing using SOLIDWORKS. So this is SOLIDWORKS. We'll get to that in a second, but basically it's software that allows you to model 3D physical objects. So that's really important if we want to make any enclosures, print out any toys, print out anything physical using the 3D printer. So this process requires the CAD, the computer-aided design software, and it also requires what's called a slicer. And the slicer is that we're using today, that we'll be going over, is called Cura. And this basically sends the commands to the computer on board of the 3D printer, and is basically formatting it so that it can read what you're trying to print in simple terms. This is kind of what it looks like. Over here, if you have a part, this is what it'll do. It'll kind of give you an idea of where it's going to sit on your bed, on the 3D printed bed, 3D print bed, and you'll have options of orienting it different ways. Maybe you want to print it upside down for some reason, but we'll get to that. So you don't have to have Cura open. Actually, I'll close it just to keep it light. Okay, so that's software. That's CAD software, and the Duo required to 3D print specifically. So another thing that I want to mention, even before we talk about designing parts and what it would take to do all that, Thingiverse, if you just type in Thingiverse to Google, it'll pop up. This is where it'll take you. And basically on Thingiverse, there are free design files that you can search. You can go by popularity, you can go by category, like home. I think there's one like functionality, different models for like cool little widgets, whatever. Anyway, it's an awesome resource, and I highly recommend it. If you need something done, I would even say start here instead of starting designing from scratch, because usually somebody's already made what you need. And so that's a very, very helpful thing that exists in the universe, on the internet, and I highly recommend you just search stuff up, like really anything, phone holder. There's a bunch of stuff people have made, simple designs that look kind of quirky, like that. Obviously, you can put your phone in there. That's actually what we're going to be doing today. So this kind of gives you an idea of what's possible. You can see something simplistic, like this elephant thing, something a little bit more functional, like this white thing that can change the angle of viewing. Maybe a simpler design over here on the left, cool one with a cat, and so on. So anyway, that's Thingiverse. I highly recommend you use it, but there's other software that you can use. So that's the first link I'll copy and paste onto the chat. All right, so now that we talked about Thingiverse, we can talk about not free designs, designs that you might pay for. So Etsy has a 3D printing section, and if you click on that section, I'll show you where it is. If I back up here. Where was it? I actually don't remember how I got there. I think what I ended up doing was searching Etsy 3D printing. Yeah, so if you type in 3D printing sales, Etsy, something along those lines, I'm sure if you just type in 3D printing into Etsy, it'll be the same thing. Anyway, you can find files, you can find prints that are being sold, and you can design them and sell them, or you can sell just the design or the print. So this is just a cool place that people can make money from, which is really cool. I don't know why there's so much anime stuff. That's kind of weird, but anyway, I'll put Etsy 3D printing link just so that you have it on the chat. All right. And then I also want to post this last link, which is a really, really good resource when learning to 3D print, design using SolidWorks, because this guy is really good. He's kind of quirky, and especially if you go on 2x speed, it moves really, really good. It's everything exactly how you want it, how you need it. And I've already gone through, a lot of it. And the way SolidWorks is really whatever you're designing, you're going to end up wanting to search exactly that. You're not going to want to start from the beginning to end necessarily. So there's that. So I recommend, if you're interested in learning on your own, to watch this series. And if you actually go to his channel, he has a lot of other SolidWorks related videos, more advanced stuff, specific stuff, and it's just an awesome resource. So with that said, let's open up, well, we already opened up SolidWorks, and you should see something like this. What might end up happening is you'll get this screen. And for now, I'll pause and take some questions. Great. So if you open up SolidWorks, you'll see these three options: part, assembly, and drawing. Now, today we're going to be working with part, but I want to give you more or less an overview of what these things mean. So part is basically where you design a part from beginning to end, however you decide to make your part. And suppose you wanted to make a part that mated with another part. Maybe you wanted to make a gear, and a gear would mesh with another gear, or it will mesh on a rack and pinion, or it'll simply be a gear that will be connected to something else, and it'll continue transferring force. You can't really use multiple parts within the part assembly, or within the part file, and in order to get a proof of concept and to do simulations and stress testing, all of that can be done under assembly. Now, assembly is, I wouldn't say it's more difficult. It's just obviously you have to have parts made to use assembly. That's the main reason we're not starting with assembly. But it's very, very useful for when you want to get proof of concepts, because not only can you see if things are going to stick out, not fit, interfere, you could see that quickly and easily, but you can also run simulations. So you can do stress tests, you can see things moving. It's really, really handy thing to do. And really, if you do have a very complex part, you're going to want to build it in an assembly file, just so that you're not guessing at how it's all going to go together. It's almost like if you're making a bunch of individual pieces of a puzzle, you'll put it together in assembly and make sure it looks good. Now, when we're making things that are not 3D printed, when we're making things that are maybe made out of wood or maybe made out of metal, we don't 3D print that unless you have a really nice 3D printer that can print metal. Usually what happens is your part is converted into a drawing. That's what this is right here. So usually the way it works is you have a part that you want made out of metal. Let's say it's a gear. What you do is you have your gear, you have your part, you already made it, all the dimensions are in there, and then you go into drawing so that you can send it, say, to your machine shop, because they need to see what you want made. So that's what drawing is. And there's actually a lot more about drawing that I'm not going to touch on, simply because I'm not an expert. But we can start with part today, and that's what we'll do today. So with that said, go ahead and click on part and then click OK. And then it should open up shortly. And sometimes this banner on the right will pop up like that. And then you could just pull it that way just by dragging it on its edge all the way to the right. I know it happens on mine every time I start opening it, so you might end up with the same thing. So I want to do a quick description of what we're seeing here. So on your left, over here, this is your part. This is pretty much the history. Obviously you can read all these things. What I want to show you is what we're going to use first and foremost, which is these planes. These 3 planes are how we're going to start, and we're not restricted to these planes. We can always make more, but these are pretty much what you're going to start out with, and it's a really good idea to start with how the part will end up being. So like today we're going to make a cup holder now, or a phone holder, and basically we're going to be able to put our phone into this part, and so obviously you'd want it on. You'd want your part sitting on top of a table or something. That's why we're going to choose top plane. That's why we wouldn't use right plane, because it's on the side, for example. And then origin is just going to show you your origin. And the reason we're going to start with the top plane is because when you do select the top plane and you start your sketch, it'll automatically show you the origin. If it doesn't, you can click on this button where it says view origins. It should already be good to go. So unless you don't see something when we start here, we might need to do that. But I'm assuming everybody has the newest version of SolidWorks, so we're probably all on the same page. So like I said, click on top plane, and you'll notice that if you were already clicking on top plane and you click on it again, it'll give you the option to rename it. We're not going to rename it. We're going to keep that plane as is. And the way we're going to do this is we're actually going to right click on top plane. So if you right click on top plane, you'll see a couple of options. You'll see sketch, you'll see show. And if you click show and then right click again, you'll see hide. So we want to, it's hidden currently, and that's what we want. But sometimes when you make other planes, like we will later, you'll notice we might want to see that, or we might want to hide it. So that's what that little eye is doing. It's showing or hiding. And then we're gonna click on normal too. So it's this little plane thing with an arrow going up. So when you click on it, it'll center you on your plane, which is really nice because then you don't get confused about where you're drawing. So once you've selected that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over here on the right. This is a sketch. So we're just gonna click that guy, and with sketch, that's when your origin will pop up. And for the most part, we're gonna wanna keep our origins in the center of our parts, almost always, because it'll make things a lot easier. And if anything breaks, as things may later in the workshop, it'll probably be, especially when we're talking about assembly, it'll probably be because of where your origins are and how they're mated and how they are in relation to other parts. So that's kind of why that's important. So once you've clicked sketch, you'll get this arrow, this little dot when you hover over these two arrows, the origin arrows. we're not going to click on it now. We can, but just know that that's there, because when it circles, like when you see the circle, when you hover over it, that means you're on it. So then, like if you're very close to it, but it doesn't show up, you're not necessarily on the origin. So that's just really important if you're trying to center your part. So what we're going to do, let me show you, because I don't want you to be confused about what we're doing today. I want to show you what we're going to do first. And this is more or less what we're going to do. And this is, what we're going to assume will fit your phone. But in reality, these dimensions I got from my phone. And my phone has dimensions that I measured using a caliper. Now, this caliper probably costs like $20 or $30 or something, and you can pick this up from like Harbor Freight. It's pretty cheap there, and in reality, the resolution that you're going to get is more than you're ever going to need, especially if you're making plastic parts. These guys, like nice versions of these guys, are more important for metal. Yeah, so for our purposes, at least any club related things, we'll have these tools at our disposal. Most other clubs do anyway. So you probably will be in a place that has one, unless you're doing this on your own. So if you are, Harbor Freight is the place to go to get one of these. Like I said, you don't have to get the longest one, but I highly recommend that you get the longer one. There's a shorter one that they sell, but obviously if your length is not as long as it can be, then you have a obvious limitation on how big of parts you can measure. So that's how I got these dimensions. These dimensions aren't crucial. We could always change them without a problem later down the road, but this is more or less what we're going to make today. And we can have a few other little things that we can add that make it cooler, but just have that in the background in terms of what we're doing today. And then I'll get back to the other. Okay, so as you can tell, we have a circle on that part. So that's where we're going to start with. And just real quick, if you won't be able to do this now, but when you do make a part, you have this line, and it's a blue line. And this line, if you pull it all the way up, it'll go like chronological order. It's basically showing you the history of your part and how you've developed your part. It'll skip the little details like the sketch that I used to make this, or the sketch that I used to make this, the slot, and the puck itself, the circle itself. So that's where we're going to start. So if I scroll up here, this is what we're doing right now. So to do that, we'll go back here, and then we have these options over here in our top left. And just as a quick check, make sure that this is highlighted. The little exit thing is kind of highlighted, and you know you're still in your sketch. If that's not there, it'll look like this. That's not on. As long as that's on, you're good. So if you do accidentally go out of that, all you have to do is go back to your top plane. And if it's off center, I'll remind you, you right click on the top plane and then click the normal to. And then you're squared up and you can keep working. So then again, click on sketch, we're here. Now I'm about to show you a trick that is very useful aside from these buttons. These buttons are basically options for what you can do. You can insert a circle, you can insert a line that they call spline that's connected. You can make squares, rectangles, and the way you make them depends on which option you select. So if you wanted to make a plain vanilla square where you start at one corner to one corner, it would be that corner rectangle. If you wanted a square that was in reference to a center point, you would want to do center rectangle. And you can read these, but these are more or less self-explanatory. And really, you're only going to know how to use them when you try using them. So that's what we're doing today. So that's why I won't be covering everything, but I'll be covering quite a bit of it, and then you'll get a feel for how this is going to go. So like I said, these are these options that we have to draw and sketch. But the trick that I'm going to show you, and by the way, what I just did is I clicked on this, but I'm still in my sketch and I don't see my plane. That's not a problem. All you have to do oh, yeah, I just messed that up. But all you have to do is you could exit your sketch, especially if you haven't drawn anything on it. Go back to your sketch and do that. If I did do something on there, all I would have had to have clicked was the sketch, and then it would have taken us back to where we were. But we haven't done anything yet. So the shortcut is using your right click and holding it down and moving it a little bit will give you this option. So as long as you keep holding it down, you'll have the option of choosing a line. So if you hover all the way into it, it'll select a line. So now you have the option of, making a line anywhere you want. Now, I don't want that line there. I want to show you Control Z. So Control Z will undo what you just did. So what we want is the circle. So hover over the circle and go to the center, click on it, and then drag it out. So as soon as you drag it out, you can click and it'll stay there. And once we do that, you right click again, and then you go up to where those little arrow things are. This is called Smart Dimension. And with this, it'll let us set the diameter. But in general, it'll let us set distances of whatever we're measuring. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to select that edge of the circle. You click once. You can move this around just so that you can decide where you're going to place this label for the size, the dimension. Now, before I go any further, if you notice 4.8, that doesn't have any units on it. And that's because the units are not set there necessarily. We'll get back to that. What I'll have you do, if you did click this green and you don't want that there, do a Control Z and that'll undo. You might have to do that a couple times. That'll undo that dimension. So this is where we were. We made a circle and we're not really caring about its dimension for when we drag it. What we're gonna use to set its dimension is that Smart Dimension button. But another thing that I want to let you know is by default, and I do this constantly, I'll forget to set my units. So right now it's in inches. By default, it starts in inches, but it makes it easier to work in millimeters, especially because on the 3D printing side, it is in millimeters. So to change that, what we do is we go down to the bottom right over here where it says IPS. There's a little button, and you click on the button, and there's these options. And what we're going to use is millimeters, grams, seconds. So you click that, it'll take you out. It'll undo your sketch. It'll take you out of your sketch. It won't undo your sketch. It'll take you out of your sketch. So to go back to your sketch, you simply click on sketch. You right click, left click on sketch, and then there's this little button right here that says edit sketch. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to click edit sketch, and then again we're going to right click and go up, right? So right click and go up, and then now we're on smart dimensions, and then now we can worry about the actual dimensions. Now I'm gonna set this to 100, and I recommend you do 2 if you wanted me to print it. I would not be okay printing 1,000 millimeters big circle, so I'm keeping it at 100. So once you do enter 100, you can either hit enter or you can click on this green arrow, and that'll set it. So now this circle is black, which means that it's defined. And this is important as an indicator that your part is going to not break. So just keep that in mind. You'll definitely run into that in the future. But for now, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. All right, so let's see what we can do. So starting from the sketch, now we can exit the sketch. So when you exit the sketch, you should be able to go to feature and push this button called extrude. Sometimes it'll do this where it wants you to select your part. Other times, what ends up happening, right now I'm going to push escape, and then it'll exit out of that. What you can do ahead of time, especially if you have multiple sketches, is either click on the sketch, like on the panel on your left, or if you hit escape again, it should turn gray. If you click on the sketch and then go to features and then go to extrude, it won't have you drop this little thing down and then have to select the sketch and do all that. I find that that saves a lot of time. And if you get in the habit of it, you won't worry about scrolling through all of your different sketches and selecting the right one, especially when these little arrows are really small. So what we want to extrude to is going to be 15. And since we're in millimeters, all you have to type in is 15. And then just a quick note, if you wanted to do inches, you could actually just type in IN, and that'll be in inches. But we're not going to do inches. We're going to do 15 millimeters. So you could just do 15 or 15 mm, same thing. So once that's done, you hit the check mark, and then now you've just made your first extrusion. And this is awesome because now you're in the 3D plane. So to move around, what we're doing to do that is we're clicking down on the scroll wheel. So when you click down on the scroll wheel, and depending on what you're touching, when you click down, you're able to revolve and rotate and really manipulate it. There's also, if you right click and hold it, you will be able to maneuver the top plane, the bottom plane, the left, and the right plane. But for now, we're just going to right click, and then we're going to go normal too. So this is what you'll see right there. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to right click. So, oops, I just closed the panel on my left by pushing this little button. But don't worry, you just push this button all day and it'll come back and go, come back and go. But like I said, go to normal to plane, on your extrusion, and then you click on it, you right click on it, and then you're going to push this button right here called Create Plane Parallel to Screen. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to do exactly that. It's going to make a plane that's parallel to wherever your screen was. So that means if I do that again, it's going to make a plane that's at a diagonal. So if I put it over here, make another plane, it's going to go at another diagonal. And if you want to make another plane, go to another diagonal, or however you were oriented. So the reason we might want to do this is because we might want to sketch on this plane, or on that plane, or on that plane, and so on and so forth. But we're not going to do that. We're going to keep it, we're going to Control Z a bunch of times. We're going to go back to where we were. And like I said, we're going to right click and click Create Plane Parallel to Screen. So do that. And we're actually going to go one step further, and we're going to call this, we're going to click on it and then click on it once more, and then it'll highlight, and we're going to call this top of part. Top of part. That way we know this is where we want the top to be, like where the phone will go. So that's just useful if you have a lot of different planes. So right now we have 2 different parallel planes, so it's kind of helpful to differentiate them. We didn't need to do this, but it's, like I said, it's good practice, especially the better and better you get at it. It'll keep things organized. So once you do that, you're selected on this plane. So if you were on the part, all you got to do is click on that plane. Or if you're still selected on that part, you can go on that panel on the left and click on that. And then once you're selected there, we're going to go to Sketch. And then once you push Sketch, you're going to push the button over here, also called Sketch. And this is basically creating another sketch on that plane. So once you've done that, you can zoom in and out with the scroll wheel forward or back. It's just nice to keep it kind of close or kind of centered. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of get close, and then we're going to start making our notches. So the way we're going to do this is using our caliper. We're going to figure out where we're going to put the hole where the phone will go. So we're going to turn it on, open it up, and then stick our phone in there. And then whatever it ends up reading, it says 73. So because it says 73 and I want it to be kind of snug, I'm going to make it a little bit more. Which is about 75. And the cool thing about CAD is you can always change it, and 3D printed materials are cheap. So worst case scenario, if you do have a ruler and not a caliper, you can change it and adjust it and then fix it later. But for now, that's what we need to do. So to do that, we can do 2 things. We can make a simple line and define, you know, it going this way, then it going this way. Oops. But we're not going to do that. That's the harder way of doing it. What we're going to do instead is click on the little arrow under the line option, and then there's an option for midpoint line. And what's cool about that is we don't have to measure anything yet. All we have to do is click on this origin and then drag the line out. And like I said, we don't have to worry about dimensions when we make our initial line, because we're going to use a smart dimension. So if you notice, right after you made your midpoint line, it's not gonna let go. It's gonna assume you're gonna keep going. So you pretty much have to have your finger near the escape button to not continue making lines. So if you hit escape, it'll let you move your mouse without clicking on anything and making extra lines. And I do see that we're a little bit off angle here, so we're gonna go back to normal to plane. And that's where we're at right now. That's how I got it squared up. And then I'm gonna hit escape so that we don't see this anymore. And then we're gonna click on this line, just a normal left click. And then you'll see this button right here called construction geometry. And we're gonna click on that. And when you click on that, you'll notice that it'll turn dashed. Now what that does is it basically is showing on your sketch, but when you extrude, it won't consider that line. And we need that because if it was a normal sketch, if it was not construction, you wouldn't be able to extrude, because when you extrude, you need an enclosed circle. So the way we do that again is, actually there's two ways. There's actually a few ways, but we're gonna keep moving and just go off of the quick way, which is you click on the line, this menu pops up, and then you click on the little line where it looks like it's converting the solid to dashed. And then I'll pause the recording and then see if we have any other questions. All right, so we've just made this midpoint construction line. And the reason we did that is so that we can define the width of our phone. And like I said earlier, I defined it to be 75 because I wanted it to fit not too snugly, but snugly enough. So the way we're going to make that is we're going to right click and go up. And now you should see this on your screen. So the smart dimension indicator thing. And then you left click on that construction line and you want to maybe center it and then click, and then the box will pop up where you enter the dimension. We're just going to do 75, or you can type in whatever you want if you know the dimensions of your phone. So 75, and then I like to hit enter, but you can also just do the green check. So boom, there you go. Now you have a midpoint that's 75 wide, 75 millimeters wide. So from here, we're going to click this or hit escape to exit the smart dimension. So we'll exit the smart dimension. Now we're exited. And what we're going to do next is click on this button called straight slot. Now, if you click on the arrow, you'll see the drop down. There's different types of slots that you can make. Right now, we're only going to work with straight slot. So when you select it, what you do is you're basically going to use this construction line as a guideline to help you do it. So you click on one of the circles, and then you click on the other dots rather. So the endpoints of your construction line. And once you do that, it'll do this. And it doesn't matter, because what we're gonna do is again right click and go up, and then we're gonna click on the inflection points of the slot, which are these orange things, with smart dimension enabled. So click on that first one and then click on that next one, and then you can see the dimension for the width of the slot. So just grab it, drag it anywhere and click, and then that dimension will be 10. And the way I came up with that was by measuring the thickness of the phone. And the thickness of the phone is actually 8, but if you open up the calipers a little bit, you'll see that the phone will take up more space. So this is going to be the incline of her part. So I figured, okay, I want it about that much incline, which is about how much you would be satisfied by looking at your phone. I also don't want it to topple over. So I kind of wanted it more vertical than horizontal. So that's how I came up with a width of 10 millimeters. So that's what we're going to type in, 10, and then enter. Awesome. Now we have the right width slot. So once we're done here, we're going to exit the dimension and then exit the sketch. And as you see, we just exited the sketch and it's still highlighted. That's actually what we want, because when we go to features right here, we are going to click on this button. Earlier we used extrude. Now we're going to use extruded cut. So this is just going to cut wherever the loop that you made is. And if you click on that and press down on your scroll wheel to move your part around, you'll see that it wants to cut that way. So we can flip that to go that way, but there's nothing to cut, and it'll give you a problem. It'll say, you know, rebuild error, there's nothing to cut, or something like that. Okay, so then to fix that, you just go the other way, and that should be fine, but we don't necessarily want to go that far down. We might want to go offset from a certain surface, or we might want to go up to a certain surface, or we could actually also go from a midplane. For now, I'm gonna just mention those, but we will do blind because I want to run into a different problem on purpose, because it'll expose you to more options of what to do. So basically, you can cut it however much you want. It actually doesn't matter. So if you click that, it'll just cut through, no problem. So you could have easily have set the height to 15 and it would have done the same thing. So just to demonstrate, I'm going to right click on that extrude cut, the cut extrude, and then click on the edit. And then instead of doing a bunch, we're going to do 15 and it should be the same. Click check mark. Yep. Okay. And the reason I knew that is because I set the height of this puck to be 15. Okay, so now we're going to go parallel to that extrude cut. Right click and then parallel to. And then what we're going to do now is another sketch. So we're going to click on that surface, and then we're going to go over here to the sketch tab. And then we're going to go over here to the sketch button. So now that we've done that, you should see the origin again. And from here, we're going to click on arc. And actually, if you don't drop this down, and if you just click on this button right here, okay, sorry, click there. Click on the sketch, click on the sketch, and then click on that button. And then those same options will pop up under here. So what we want to do is click on this left one, and basically the description shows your first point is the center, the second point is one of the ends, and your third point is the other end. So starting at that orange dot, when you hover over the origin, you're going to click there, and then you're going to click about there. That's fine. And sure, we'll just go this far. This actually doesn't matter because this is just going to be a construction line. So right click on the line and then click construction geometry, and then it should pop up as dashed. Cool. So if you do, what was it? Control. Never mind. So now that you have that construction geometry line, you're going to go back to sketch when you're on there. And then you're going to click on this. Oh, sorry. I accidentally clicked on the button itself. But you don't have to. You can just click on sketch. As long as that dotted construction line is highlighted blue, you should be able to click on this text button right here. And when you click on it, it should say, it should already start you off with the sketch highlighted, with the construction line arc highlighted. And then you should be able to just click on text and type anything you want, and it'll show up as a feature on the sketch. So we're gonna type in our names. So if you want to type in your name or a friend's name or my name, that'll be cool. And then you know, Brian's phone holding, sure. And to center it, there's the centering button right here. So you just click that, and you can do bold. You can actually also do different fonts by clicking on this checkbox so that it's not checked. And then you click on font, and you're able to change the font to all of these. Actually, I think you're able to download other ones, but we're just gonna do this font because it looks cool. And then you also have all of these other options, like you can have it go the other direction, like in reverse, or you can have it be upside down on the opposite side of the construction line. We're just gonna keep it simple, but I'm gonna back up and say we don't want this yet. And I'm gonna say that we didn't start out by clicking that sketch, right? So I'm gonna click escape a bunch of times, and then I'm gonna exit the sketch. So if you click escape a bunch of times after that, nothing really should be highlighted. And then if you tried to click on this text, it'll say it'll say what I mentioned earlier, where you have to navigate through this little button right here, this one right here, and then you have to go to the exact sketch that you wanted. And then once you're in that sketch, you have to highlight that line. So I'm just going to exit out of all of that again, exit out of the sketch. And then what I'm going to do is just click on the line and then push the text button. Oh, okay, sorry. I might want you to just select this and then do edit sketch and then click on it. Oh, maybe not, sorry. So just selecting the sketch and editing it, so right click and then edit sketch, that should be enough. Okay, interesting. So the issue that I was just running into is sometimes when your, say, construction line is not highlighted and then you try typing, if it's not highlighted and you try typing, it'll want you to select the thing, like I said earlier with this drop down, but we didn't have to do that if we right clicked on it, edited the sketch, pushed the letters, and then it'll just say, okay, tell me which one, instead of having you go down through here. Like I said, this is really a problem when your part is very complex because you have a lot of those drop downs. So anyway, I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to center it. I'm going to change the font to elephant. Forte is okay, sure. And then you can actually increase the font too. Okay, so if you wanted to change the height, you'd have to click on points, and then select exactly what point font you wanted. So if you wanted really big writing, you go to a big thing, and then whichever. And then obviously, if it doesn't, if it's so big that it doesn't fit on your construction line, it just won't show it. So the trick would be obviously to reduce your size font, or you can continue this arc. But for now, I'm just gonna make it smaller so that it's completely legible. We'll just do 16 and save sign. Okay, so I'm gonna click OK, and then once that is done, I'm gonna exit the sketch, and then go to features, and then I'm gonna do extrude cut again. So it wants me to go down here, and like I said, we or trying to avoid that because that takes time. So I'm going to exit out a bunch of times, click on the sketch, and then go to features, and then extrude cut. And then it should just immediately tell us which direction we want to cut. And it does. And we can cut it all the way through, but we don't really want to do that. I mean, maybe you do. But if you didn't want to do that, if you wanted to make it kind of recessed, we can give it a thickness of 2 millimeters, and then it'll kind of look kind of cool because it's kind of sunk in there. Another cool thing is instead of it being sunk in there and cutting into the part, if we were to well, I'll just hit OK, and then you can kind of see what that's going to look like. But like I said, if we don't want to do that, if we didn't want to cut into it, if maybe we wanted to extrude out, it would be the same exact process, except instead of clicking on extrude cut, we would do extrude base. So that's kind of a cool effect. And the way we would do that quickly is by right clicking on this extrude cut and deleting it. It won't delete the sketch, which means your writing will still be there. And we're going to do that again, like I said, except now we're going to extrude the base, not cut it. So we're going to select the sketch, and actually while we're at it, select the sketch and then click it one more time, and that'll allow you to change it. So that'll be maybe label, and then that way you know what that is doing. So we'll just rename it. It's already selected. We just go under features, and then we click on Extrude Base. And now it should tell us, okay, do you want to push it up? Sure. And then if we do want to do that, we'll do 1 millimeter just so it doesn't stick out too much. And then we're okay with that. Now, right now, what we have is a slot through a puck with our name on it. And if we normal this, we may not want that bottom to be exposed that way. So a trick to do that, there's actually a couple ways of doing this. If you flip it, if you go to the back and click on this back end, what we can do is click on sketch and then click on the sketch button up here. If we want to be a little cleaner about this, we right click and go normal. And then what we do is we go to circle, so right click, and then it'll give you the options. And then you go all the way to the right where the circle is. And now you've selected circle. You go to the origin, and then you go to the edge there of your puck. And then what you do is you click OK. And then you're already on that sketch. You're going to exit. It's already selected in blue, as you can see. And this is also in gray. So you can go to features and then click Extrude Base. So you can give the thickness that you want the phone to sit on. So you'll add material to the puck. But if you don't want to make it bigger, you flip the side and just tell it, oh, make me a bottom that's 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters or whatever you want. And what that'll do is that'll fill in that slot. So now your phone won't fall through if somebody picks up the holder. So that's, now we're almost done. I'm going to pause really quickly to see if anybody has any questions or got caught up on it in the recording. Great. So we're pretty much done with our part for the most part, but kind of funny. But we may want to make it look better. Oops. This one. Top of part. Okay, go to top of part and then go normal. Now we see the top. Okay, cool. So to make our part look less bulky and maybe look a little bit sleeker, what we can do is we can trim the edges of our part. So specifically when we put our phone inside, we want it to kind of like easily go inside. So what we can do to do that is select these edges. And the way we're going to select these edges is by control and clicking on all of the edges that we're going to clean up. And specifically, it's called fillet, and that button, fillet, is right at the top, and it'll only show up when you're under features. So if you're in Sketch, it won't show up. So you have to go to features and then fillet, and you click on fillet, and then it'll ask you for what radius do you want to fillet your part at. So radius basically means if you had a circle with that being at its edge, how far from the center would that radius go? That's why you see this curve right here. That's the radius specifically that it's talking about, this radius, this to its center. So that just is kind of some explanation. At first it was very confusing for me, but maybe not so much for you. What we're gonna do is we're gonna reduce the radius so that it's very close to the edge. So you'll get a feel for it simply by clicking 1 and then enter. Or you click 2 in this fillet parameter box and hit enter. And maybe you could do 4 and hit enter, and then you can get a feel for how much fillet. I like maybe 2 or even 3. 3 might make it look kind of nice, but then it might not give you the same rigidity. So yeah, I think 2 is better. But you can play with it all you want, and you can actually give it different. You can have it do different radiuses for different parts. So maybe the part that it's resting on the back, you'd want to do a less of a radius so that it's more supporting. But for now, we're just going to do 2 there. And look at how our part came out now. It looks kind of nice. And we're going to keep doing that. So anywhere you really want. And for instance, this outer edge, I want to do a fillet there. So I'll click fillet after I've already clicked on that outer radius. And then on that one, maybe I want to do something like 6 just to make it look really, or see, that won't fit. I mean, it will, but it really kind of won't. So you might want to be conscious of how much your radiuses are sometimes. So that's why you just click on it and see where you're at. So I think 5 was maybe a little bit better. And then you click on that, and now it's more smoothed out. I don't want to put a fillet on the bottom because I kind of want to keep that as sound as possible in terms of like it flopping over. But that's pretty much where we're at. Now you can keep going. You can add holes to this, and you can have it hold pencils for you as well. You can flip this on the back and edit this sketch, and then put a little slot for a phone charger, and then whenever you put it in there, it's charging your phone. You can have it connect, multiple devices. It's actually pretty cool. What a phone holder can do. You can recess an inductive charger onto there. It's kind of cool what you can do with it, but really it's up to your imagination. But I hope this gave you a pretty good understanding of how to work with SOLIDWORKS. And I want to also mention that we can change the way this part looks. So I'm just going to get rid of this top part plane by hiding it. And so I right click and then I click hide, and now it looks a little easier on the eyes. And then what you do on the right side here, you have this panel, and these are appearances. So if you click on the drop down menu for appearances, you have different options. So you can change the metal. You can change it to a metal look, like if it's going to be a metal part. In this case, it's going to be a plastic part. And so we might want to do something more like, like high gloss or something. And then you have all these options to choose from. And basically what you do is you drop that into your part. What part? Let's see. You drop that into your part, which is right here on the left panel, and you can easily change the way. You should be able to drop it on here. Sometimes it doesn't work, which is kind of weird, but for sure when you drop it on the part, you're able to change its appearance. So like if you wanted to make it out of metal, you'd go up here, drop down the metal, and then maybe you want chrome. Just do chrome plated, and that's more or less a chrome plated part. And yeah, these are just kind of small touches that you might want to think about, if you're interested in making a part that looks good. But I hope you guys learned something, and I hope that you know, you're interested in continuing learning how to work with SolidWorks. And you know, if you guys have any things you want to learn to do, I'd be more than willing to help you with that, because it's really when you're interested that you're going to learn the most. So I encourage you to practice and reach out if you have any questions about how to work with any of this stuff. Like I said, I posted some of these links. The last link, the one to the SolidWorks tutorials for absolute beginners, is by far one of the most helpful resources that I've seen. And there's a bunch more. This is just a really good one that I found on YouTube. But with that said, we went quite a bit over. But if you guys have any other questions any other time, reach out. But for now, I'll end the recording and then see if you guys have any other questions. So let's do that. Stop recording. All right. So once you have your part made, you have it made of plastic. And actually, this doesn't, the appearance doesn't matter, but we'll just do it for fun. So when you have your part, what you want to do when you're done is save as. Wherever you want to save it, you're going to want to do something like phone holder. And what I like to do, because I mess up a lot and I edit a lot, whenever I name a part, I always do like 001, and then that way I can have some form of version control. So I'll do 002, and believe me, I've gone it up to like 20, and I can imagine that it can be 100. So that's why I always do 001. So there's my part holder. Oh, so when you label it, when you name it, whatever you do, you're going to be prompted as default, because you're working under part, to save this as a part for SolidWorks. But if you click here, you have many other options. And if you scroll all the way down, you can also save it as an STL. So I always like to save my parts as SolidWorks parts first, and then I'll save it as an STL. And the reason we need the STL is to export it to Cura. So I just saved it here as a SolidWorks part. So for now, I'm going to save it as an STL. So as an STL, I'll name it the same thing. And then it'll pop this thing up. And then you just click yes. And once that's done, you can minimize that because we don't need it. And then we'll open up Cura. And Cura is a software called, is a slicer software that's open source, which means that people are constantly making it better. And I can vouch for this, that sometimes this is way better than using something that's expensive that you have to pay for, that not a lot of people use, and there aren't a lot of videos on YouTube that'll help you when you get stuck. So Cura is exactly that. There's a ton of people using Cura, and there's a ton of people adding to Cura. And I'll go over very briefly some really nice features that you don't have in other slicers. Sometimes you do, especially the nice ones, but this is one that's free, and this is one that's constantly being improved. So when we open up Cura for the first time, we'll have to select our printer. So we may have to click add printer. And then click add a non-networked printer. And what that means is if it's connected to your computer, it's networked, or if you have it on your Wi-Fi system, it's networked. But if you're just plugging it in and sending your file with the SD card or USB drive, it's not going to be networked. So you click non-networked, and specifically, we're going to go down to Creality, and that's the brand name of the printer that I have. And specifically, I have the Creality Ender Pro. So if you'd like me to 3D print a part for you, all you'd have to do is select that guy and then add. I already have it added on mine, so I won't add it. Otherwise, you would click add and then go from there. And then once you have it added, it'll pop up under here. So I'm gonna click on the one that I have, so Creality Ender 3 Pro, and then right away you'll see this quality thing. And basically, the higher the quality, the longer time it'll take, because it's gonna go much slower. This is gonna be very careful. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do we'll do standard quality. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do discard changes. And what that means is any changes that you've already made on this software, on this drop-down menu with a bunch of options, it'll get rid of them, and it'll add the ones that are set by default for standard quality for the Ender 3 Pro. So discard will go back to the standard, and that's what we're going to start with. So under here we have a bunch of different options, and I'm going to go through the important ones that you'll need to know first. When you first want to do your print, first of all, you're going to need to bring in your part. So you're going to click on this file image logo thing, and then wherever you ended up saving it, you're going to go to that. So I have it saved under SolidWorks phone holder, and then I open it. And then I open it, and there it is. So to maneuver, you're going to right click on really anywhere, and you're just going to drag it around.
I don't think it's your screen.
Oh, my bad. I thought I pushed something. Okay, so I'll undo that. Clear. Okay, so like I said, sorry about that. I think I accidentally closed my my share screen. So to put your part on here and start this process, you have to click on this button, which is the file button, like the import file. And you're gonna go to wherever you saved your SolidWorks file. I saved it under a folder, in a folder, and I named it phone holder. So click on that, click enter, and then you can see how it's gonna pop up. And so to maneuver here, you're gonna click down on your mouse wheel, and that'll allow you to pan. And that's kind of helpful. And then if you right click, it'll allow you to kind of rotate. This is really helpful. And then if you scroll in and out, you're able to see detail a little easier just by going on the scroll wheel and scrolling in and out. So we can see a part there, and it's not a good part. We see a bunch of red. So everywhere you see red, the printer is going to have a really hard time to print, if not totally fail. And instead of printing on layer on top of a layer on top of a layer, wherever there's red, it's going to try to print on air. So that will never happen, and you'll have a failed print. And your phone definitely will not fit inside. And it's the same thing down here. It won't be able to do this. So there are these things called supports, and those are usually the solution that you're going to end up using to get around that. Now, right away, you can tell if we reoriented this in a different way, we wouldn't have those problems. And that's why I did choose this part, because I wanted the first print that you made to be 100% successful. So the way we do that is we click on the part, and you'll see its origin. So on this left side, you're going to see these options. So we're going to click on this one right here with the little arrow spinning around the part. And basically that'll give us these arrows on the part itself. So if you can see, the red one will rotate it so that it's laying down. When you let go, it'll automatically fall down, flush to the surface, or flat on the surface. And then that's exactly what we want, because now we don't see any red. Oops. So that's exactly what we want. We know we're going to have a successful print because we don't see any red. Now, if we did have to print it in a weird angle, you can see there's a ton of red over here. So maybe if it wasn't so weird, it would be less red. So if we did have a part that was so complex and we, despite our best efforts, we couldn't orient it in the best way, what we can do, what I want to show you, is an advanced option called tree supports. Now, supports will be printed if you click that box. If you don't click that box, it'll try to print on air, which won't work. So always use supports if you have red, and specifically when you do have supports, you go to this option, support structure, and where it says normal, there's a drop down. You just click on the box and then you click tree. Now, tree supports are really awesome. They're the best supports because they make it really easy when your part is done to remove from the print. So to show you this, I'm gonna go over here on my right left, bottom right left, or bottom right, sorry. And there's this button called slice. Now, for now, we won't worry about any other options. I want to emphasize the importance of this. So when you slice it, it'll show you more or less what, like the print time, and then you'll be able to export it. But when we do preview after slicing, it'll show us what exactly it's going to print. So I'm going to close this a little bit. And basically, those little supports there that are holding up where there was red are supported by these supports that look like trees. Now, to contrast this, I'm going to show you what it looks like if we use the normal supports. So the normal supports, it didn't even print anything on top or outside of. What it did is it directly filled it in. Now, the problem with that is that it makes it very difficult to take out, and it makes it so that you use more plastic to print. So yeah, it literally takes longer, and it might ruin your part when you go to actually use it, and then like take it apart and fix it and try to use it, clean it up to use it. So that right there is extremely valuable. Like I can't tell you how many times it's solved a lot of problems. So now that we know about tree supports, we can move on to the normal thing. So we already talked about quality, and we're not going to really get into the weeds of quality, but I do want to talk about what everyone in the 3D printing world is probably most sensitive to, which is infill. Infill means if I set this to 100, it'll be a solid part. There are no air gaps, there are no air bubbles, there's no cavities, nothing like that. But if you do 0% infill, well, before I do that, I set it to 100, and then I sliced it, so it'll tell us more or less how long it'll take, 18 hours, and that's a very small part. But if I do 5% infill, it'll print out in 4. So there's a huge difference there, and there's a sweet spot. Like if I did 50, it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll take exactly half, which is kind of weird because it's also printing out the supports. So 8 hours. So it's not linear. It's kind of a weird thing. When you do it, when you, for the first time, export to Cura, do play with the infill. I've made parts with 0 infill, just in the interest of time. and they've actually worked out pretty well. Like surprisingly well, like to the point that I can stand on top of them and they don't deform or anything. So yeah, 0% infill, it'll cut down the time in half from 50% infill, which is pretty cool. So anyway, the standard, I don't know, 10%, 20% infill. But you really will get an idea of this when you start printing parts for yourself, or at least, you know, getting prints and comparing them yourself. So that's infill. And then another thing that I want to show you is material. So if we're using PLA, which is what I have here now, PLA, usually it'll be printed on the filament. So I should have one right here. PLA, this is plain Jane PLA, like it's normal PLA. There's nothing special about it. There's different types of PLA that are stronger and shiny. They call it silk and blah, blah, blah. Well, this PLA is just normal PLA. The thickness is 1.75 millimeters and it's white. And basically the temperature that it prints at is usually printed on it, and if it's not, you can Google it and go to the website and literally just look for it. It's going to be on there. Everything has a data sheet, and you really want to go to the data sheet and read that, because you're going to look for the temperature that the injector part is going to be heated to, and that's what this number is. It's going to say 215 to 230, and you just pick some point in between. So I'm gonna do 220. And the other number that we need to worry about, so we just did printing temperature, that's the nozzle. The other number that we need to worry about is the build plate temperature. The build plate temperature is, for this, is I think 40 or 60. I believe it's 60. What is it right now? Yeah, 60. But again, you want to really just go to the website, go to the manufacturer, because they've done this a million times and they're going to tell you exactly what works the best, but you can always tweak it. So those are just kind of generic numbers though. You can also look up the specific material within Cura, but people don't normally, because this is just much faster. And also you usually have a bunch of different materials, so it's just kind of a hassle, and it's just faster to remember exactly what you need. So another thing that I want to go over is when you go under speed, my printer really can only be run at like 40. I mean, you can push it. I mean, I have, but your quality is going to go down. So this usually is set to around 40 for my printer. But more importantly, there are these two options, these checkboxes, and basically what they do is they keep the machine from pulling and just basically moving too fast, because sometimes the material is such that it won't come out when you want it to, because it's so thick, or because it needs, you know, whatever. There's kind of a lot that goes into these different materials. PLA is like the easiest material to print with, but even with PLA, if you enable both of these, you'll see a big difference. It's very, very nice. There's no stringiness necessarily, not always. Sometimes there is. It just increases the quality of your part. And if you don't have to print anything more than once, then you're having a good day. So those are the main things that I really wanted to go through. Yeah, that pretty much covers it. There are other more advanced things that I'd love to talk about, but I could be here forever. But other than that, do you guys have any questions? I'll pause the recording.